Hello and welcome to the MHR podcast. I'm Andy, and this week we're joined by a very special guest from MHR, Charles. How are you doing, Charles?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you.
So thanks for joining us this week. This week and all of this month, we want to be celebrating Cybersecurity Awareness Month, which is vital for a load of businesses, even though a lot of businesses or employees within those businesses don't necessarily understand it, which is why I thought it'd be good for you to come in and join us today. So could you start by introducing yourself and what you do here at MHR?
Cool. So I'm Charles. I'm the Senior Information Security Manager here at MHR, and I'm part of the Cybersecurity team.
Cool. So why is it important that we recognise Cybersecurity Awareness Month and just the importance of cybersecurity?
I think the reason why we talk a lot about Cybersecurity Awareness Month during October is simply because I don't think we talk about it enough. Within a business, a lot of businesses will probably spend half an hour a year on doing cybersecurity training across their employees. But when we're looking at what's happening to a lot of businesses up and down the country and globally, is that cybersecurity incidences are happening more and more frequently. Whether that's an accidental data breach through unawareness of training with employees, or whether that is threat actors actually going out to attack companies and organisations.
So there's a lot of misconceptions, isn't there, about cybersecurity, or the risks, or like you say, people aren't spending enough time educating themselves about it. So it's probably very hard for businesses, especially small businesses, to kind of be proactive about cybersecurity threats. They're probably reliant on the experts coming in to support their businesses. So I wondered if you could help me, because I'm quite naive to it, and I'm probably a threat to our own business. So I wanted to take the opportunity to kind of test some knowledge. I've got some, I think, common cybersecurity myths or misconceptions that I'm going to say, and I wondered if you could kind of shine a bit of light on that, if that's all right. So the first myth we've got is that cyber threats are always external. Is that right?
I think the majority are, but I think what a lot of people and a lot of organisations probably don't look at is the insider threat. I think from a government perspective, sort of in the intelligence and military community, then you look at the insider threat and you'll be always watching. But when it comes to small to medium-sized, even large organisations, they probably don't look at it. And that is when you have somebody who's probably a disgruntled employee, maybe they've been passed over for promotion, maybe they're seeking better opportunities, looking at going to a competitor. And what they're probably doing on their way out as they're leaving is taking confidential proprietary information with them, or they're actively trying to harm the business from the inside. And that can cause just as much damage to an organisation in terms of financial and reputational damage as a sort of an external threat actor trying to get into the business. I suppose
there's a higher risk there as well, because actually you've got an employee that probably knows the business a bit more and those routes to the information that you're probably trying to lock down that an external would probably be less aware of. So there's probably a bit more of a risk there to consider.
Oh, much so, yeah, because they would have all the knowledge inside the business as well.
Okay, good. Well, that's that busted. So the second myth is cybersecurity is just for IT departments to worry about.
Yeah, so I think that's a big myth throughout the business or throughout all sort of organisations, is that cybersecurity is dealt with by one single department and that's it. But actually, it's much more sort of top-down approach. Direction comes from the top, but it goes to the employees. The employees are there; they're accessing data every day. They need to know how to handle it securely.
There's only so much control a single department can have on other people's behaviour, right? So as an employee who isn't part of your IT department or your cybersecurity team that's understanding how these things work, right, I still have an email address or a phone access, something that has a route into the business. If I'm not educated and behaving, it's on me to make sure I'm doing that, because you can't control what I'm doing. You can limit me to a certain extent, but if I'm a threat because I'm not educated, that's also on me. So I get it, that's why it's so important, this business-wide responsibility, right?
Yeah, exactly that.
So next myth is cyber threats focus primarily on large organisations.
Yeah, I think this is quite a big myth, and it's because we hear it a lot. When you look at what's produced in the media in terms of these massive organisations have had data breaches. I think the last big one we saw in the UK was the MOD payroll provider. They had a data breach that affected 3 million employees within the armed forces. But what we don't often see is actually the small to medium-sized businesses, because they can't cope. They don't have the resources behind them to put a big cybersecurity package around their organisation. So actually, they are more susceptible, and I think we don't hear about them because a lot of them probably actually end up going bust from a cybersecurity. You look at, I think last year, the average cost of a cybersecurity breach was 3.8 million. That's an awful lot of money for a small to medium-sized enterprise.
Cool. So next one is cybersecurity is a one-time effort.
Yeah, that's another one that's quite big. You know, people do their CBTs or their annual training, where you do loads of different training. You could do health and safety. You could do about, you know, fire in your department, what to do. We sort of roll cybersecurity into that, and then people do it once, and then they think, oh, that's me. I've done my 5-minute presentation.
Yeah, I'm aware now. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, actually, it's not. And what I like at MHR is we're constantly looking at how to evolve our training. How do we make it so that, you know, people are engaged? We do simulated phishing to make sure people are aware of the different threats coming out there. And we've actually released some really good videos for the Cybersecurity Awareness Month.
Brilliant. And I suppose it's crucial because what we're recognising is that it's not just, it's not static, right? You can't just, you're aware of it now, so just bear that in mind for the rest of your career. It's like, well, actually the threat's always evolving, so we need to make sure we're regularly reviewing that and also looking at how we can be proactive to avoid those things, because as technology evolves, the threats evolve. And I suppose we've always had this discussion with your team, but can we really ever be ahead of the threats, or can we ever be responsive to as they come in at us? Like, we can't predict the next attack, right?
It's a really interesting question. It's a bit like cat and mouse. Yeah. So yes, threat actors are probably always one step ahead, but it is the responsibility of the cybersecurity team to work with all the departments in the business to understand, you know, if you're employing or deploying a new technology within the business, what controls are you putting in there in the first place? You know, the way we do it at MHR is we're looking at secure by design. So any new technologies that have been onboarded, we're reviewing them. We're seeing what controls can we put in place to make sure that, you know, we want to make the business big and successful and let it do what it wants to do, but at the same time we want to make it as secure as possible.
Yeah. So the last myth we're going to bust now is that, this sounds like quite a basic one. I feel like this is easily busted. Using public Wi-Fi is safe.
Yeah, I think public Wi-Fi is there, it's everywhere. You know, you could go into a pub and there's free Wi-Fi. You could go into Tesco's or a supermarket and there's free Wi-Fi. You can go into a petrol station, there's free Wi-Fi. Everywhere there's free Wi-Fi. Yeah, it's not safe. Simple fact is you never know who else is on that network. You know, if you go to a pub, a restaurant, and you want to connect to the Wi-Fi because it doesn't have good signal, you kind of do so at your own risk there. You know, if somebody is there sat in the corner of a laptop, you never know what information are they trying to intercept. Whilst you might be streaming something for your kids.
Yeah, true. Brilliant. Cool. So I think that's really helpful. I think some of these may seem obvious, but actually there's a lot more detail to it because not everyone is a cybersecurity expert, right? So I wanted to leave on kind of 3 kind of key pieces of advice you would give any employee or organisation to consider how they can be more proactive or take more responsibility over their cybersecurity. I think you've given us kind of 3 here. So could you take us through them?
Yeah, so I think one of the main ones is understanding your data and making sure your employees understand the data they're handling. You know, we at MHR, we have classifications for data, both for our digital copies and for our assets. And it's making sure that employees are aware because, you know, we don't want employees handling what we call a highly sensitive documents the same as they would with a public document, you know, something that is going to go out to probably the press media. There are different ways to handle it, and it's making sure that people understand that. So what we're not creating is an accidental data breach whereby something has been sent to the wrong person in the wrong method and is accessed by somebody who shouldn't access it.
Brilliant. Thank you. And the next you've mentioned MFA.
Yeah, so MFA is a big one. You know, we push at MHR and we push it through our products, but a lot of people still don't use it because they think it's time consuming, or it's just an extra step that they've got to do because they want to log into their application. Yeah. So whether that's, their social media, or whether that's a banking application on their phone, MFA is just that extra stopgap to stop a criminal or a threat actor trying to access that. Yeah. And it's a really quick, simple tool that anybody can use. Yeah. Yes.
But I suppose actually as technology evolves and people get more exposed to these things like multiple factor authentications, which I can't say. So MFA is easier. It's creeping into our personal lives as well. So I feel like these things start in work because then these places need to be more secure. So you're made to do it as an employee, like, oh, this is a pain. I've got to do all this with my face and my thumb or my password or my whatever, or an app. But actually, we're seeing it now on our own mobile phones, right? In personal life, like, okay, I need 2 ways of signing into my banking. So people do understand it a bit more, right?
Yeah, I think people do understand it. I think one of the major issues with a lot of applications outside the workplace is that it's optional. So it's there for the user, and it's that, I think products would say it's customization. You can access it when you want to. I think actually probably these products have a duty to actually say, we roll out MFA. Yeah. Like with People First, for example, we are rolling out MFA regardless.
Yeah, great. And the last one is phishing with a P, not an F.
Yeah, so I think Gartner had a really interesting stat where they said just over 90% of data breaches start with phishing. And it's kind of something that I think we're always trying to drive home to our employees at MHR is, the way that you're going to get attacked or somebody's going to try and interact with you is through phishing. And so that could be via email. So they send you an email and say, can you sign into here to access this document? And they're trying to steal your credentials. Could be somebody, what we call phishing, so phoning you up saying that they're so-and-so within the business, whether that's internal or external. Can you transfer some money across to an account? SMS, we're seeing more and more of. And the big one there is QR codes, which is coming up a lot. People putting out QR codes, scanning QR codes, and not realising they're going off to sort of like a malicious website.
I didn't even think about that, actually, it's QR codes. Because also we laughed about this. We always thought QR codes were weird, and no one ever really took them on. Then COVID happened, and everyone realised they had to log into venues with QR codes. And now they seem to be back in a bigger way. Like, people are engaging with them more because you can order a pint with a QR code, for example. But I didn't realise you could actually maliciously use them to take you to different ways. But didn't even think about that.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned about the restaurants because that's the biggest area they're being used in. So restaurants, pubs that are using QR codes on menus or on tables to order. A really simple way for a threat actor to get in there is to actually just stick a QR code on top of the original QR code, takes them to a malicious site which looks like the real one. So you think you're ordering a meal or a pint, and actually, you're just paying off a threat actor.
Wow, I'm glad I know about that. I'm going to get paranoid now and just start picking at menus. But it's worth doing. Cool. So free in a nutshell then. So understanding your data, MFA, phishing. Anything else you want to add, Charles? Make people more aware of their actions.
A simple thing to remember is think before you click for anything that ever comes through, any communications. Look at it. Do you know where it's coming from? Are you expecting it? Is it from somebody that you trust?
Yeah. Well, Charles, I appreciate that. Thank you for contributing. You've opened my eyes a bit. I'm a bit more careful now when I'm at a pub. And I'm sure not many people say this, but as someone who works in cybersecurity, I just want to wish you a very happy Cybersecurity Awareness Month because it's for you. And I want you to enjoy it. Thanks for coming in. I'm sure we'll get you back in as technology and like these things, these threats are always evolving. So we're always going to need your advice. So I do appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
So if you want to find out more about what we do at MHR, obviously you can get in touch with the team. There's a lot of things we do on this topic and the full range of world of work, be it HR, payroll, finance, security, the whole lot. So make sure you check us out on mhrglobal.com. Until then, we'll see you next week.